But I mastered their styles like the 5 deadly venoms. So all he had to do was get next to a nigga like that, he could destroy it.
Believe in that, real. We plan to take the same strategy we use with Death Row West, mind over matter, taking all our weaknesses and making it into our strength. That all these people talk about an East Coast, West Coast war, they like the Judas was to Jesus. They only here to cause confusion. We here to bring money and to bring change. They here to cause confusion. All these weak rappers, Nas, all these suckers, they battling off of East and West like this is a game. This ain't no game. If this was chess, we'd be yelling checkmate 3 years ago, because we've been beat these. It's not a game.
It's not about Top Rank and Golden Boy. It's about Haymon and PBC, power and money, riders and punks. What side are you on? What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. I return as Egoveli, and I'm gonna cut right into it. This is probably gonna be a mini series. I'm gonna probably break the videos down to really expose some things. Now, there's a bunch of people talking, Haymon this, lawsuits, different things, and I'm getting sick of talking about it. And this is the thing. I'm always been more of a leader than a follower, and more of a show me than anything else. And for whatever reason, I feel a lot of people are using Al Haymon as this scapegoat, where they blame him for everything. Everything wrong with boxing, it's Haymon's fault. He did it. It's like, just point the finger at him. He, you know what I'm saying? And the funny thing is, people, they leave comments all the time. I hate Haymon. I hate him. He doesn't even do interviews. Versus you look at the other actual promoters like Bob Arum, Oscar De La Hoya. You can go on YouTube and find like different boxing channels and boxing outlets that are YouTube based, and they got interviews with them dudes. But you don't see, go to them same, and if you guys can provide me, copy and paste the link, show me a YouTube boxing outlet that has an interview on YouTube right now with Al Haymon, and they're asking him questions. And you won't really see it. But people, they still want to use Al Haymon. And I'm getting sick of it. And this is the thing. I'm going to break down these videos. I'm going to use facts. And then I'm going to be done with it. Egoveli has other things to do. Now, again, people continue to use Al Haymon to blame for everything. He did it. Everything. Like, I'm hearing all kinds of, he does the mismatches only. And it's like, why is Al Haymon held to such a standard that we're not willing to hold other promoters or other boxing entities too? You know what I mean? Why is it just Al Haymon is giving us mismatches, but you want to nitpick those fights? And I'm going to really break it down. Let's really truly break it down in this video. Now, the difference between me and a lot of boxing fans is you can't just tell me something without backing it up. Like the old saying goes, just because you pour syrup on shit don't make it pancakes. So if people are proclaiming that Al Haymon is the worst thing for boxing, he's the only one providing mismatches, then you got to prove it. So I started looking, I started hearing so many people talk about mismatches, and I started to really analyze like what's really happening. And I'm going to give you guys some examples. Now, this is the thing with my examples. I'm trying my best to make it as close as possible. Apples and apples. Some of you guys do apples and watermelon. You're like, Roy Jones moved up to heavyweight, so Floyd Mayweather should too. And you say all this far out shit. Me, I'm trying to get people within a similar pay grade, so to speak. So if I'm using fighter A, then I'm going to try to get fighter B with similar stats, similar stature, similar social class status in boxing, basically, right? Because all the different promoters, they have different rosters, different stables, so it's impossible for me to get someone with the exact same resume, the exact same age and everything. But I try to make it as close as possible to really show and break it down that what Al Haymon is doing is nothing different than what other people are doing. So let's break it down. So let's take a look at some examples. You got a prospect with Al Haymon, PBC, Earl Spence Jr. 17-0, undefeated, 14 knockouts. So I came very close using a top rank example. So people are saying Al Haymon is the king of mismatches. Oscar Valdez, his resume and his prospect status is almost identical to Earl Spence Jr. He has 16-0, undefeated. They both have 14 knockouts. Earl Spence Jr. is 25. Oscar Valdez is 24. And they both haven't reached that next level in terms of their careers. So let's see who they recently fought. And these both of them just fought. So I'm not using examples from a long time ago. They both just fought. Earl Spence Jr. fought on the Broner Porter undercard, right? He was initially supposed to fight Roberto Garcia. He pulled out, so he was stuck with the last-minute Al Haymon replacement with Phil LaGreco, right? Phil LaGreco, you look at his resume. So Phil LaGreco, 26-2, he was coming off a win. He did lose right before that, and that was to Sean Porter. But Sean Porter, it's not really a bad loss at welterweight. Sean Porter's beaten Devin Alexander. He just beat Broner. He also beat guys like Paulie Malignaggi. So it's not a horrible loss. So 26-2, 14 knockouts. He's been stopped once. He was coming off a win. And before that, he lost to Sean Porter. So some experience. Then you look at Oscar Valdez's last opponent, Ruben Tamayo, with a record of 25-6-4. And he's been stopped 4 times, right? Get this. Ruben Tamayo, he actually just fought recently, and he got stopped by Jesus Cuellar. Then Bob Arum put him in there with Oscar Valdez, his prospect. So again, when we're talking about Al Haymon being the king of mismatches, what are you guys really saying? Because both Phil LaGreco and Roberto Garcia were the ones supposed to fight, and obviously one didn't fight, and that was to no fault of Earl Spence or Al Haymon. But that's the competition that they were feeding to their prospect, Earl Spence Jr. And then you look at the top rank side, and Oscar Valdez, they put him in there with a guy who's coming off of a stoppage loss to Jesus Cuellar. Now let's take a look at some welterweight fights. Now, Brandon Rios versus Mike Alvarado. People again say Al Haymon is the king of mismatches, and I have a hard time finding a fight that turned out to be worse than that in the welterweight picture from PBC, right? And I actually went to Alvarado versus Rios, and I was very disappointed. Reason being, I spent my hard-earned YouTube money. I got a hotel. I got a nice hotel for a week. Got my plane ticket from Cali to Denver. I was pumped. I was like, yes, grudge match. Let's see it. End of a trilogy. Gotti Ward. And the fight didn't deliver. I was thoroughly pissed, right? And obviously, we don't know how fights are going to play out. But let's take a look at the matchmaking, because that's what people are saying. They're saying Al Haymon is putting on mismatches. Now, Brandon Rios was coming off of a shaky performance where I thought he was losing to Diego Chavez, and then Diego Chavez hauled off and got disqualified, which I thought was some bullshit. But nonetheless, he was coming off a win. It just wasn't a great win, right? And you look at Mike Alvarado. Alvarado was coming off of he hadn't fought since the year before, 2014, I believe, and he fought Marquez, which is a legend, Juan Manuel Marquez, at a catchweight. And guess what? He was getting dominated by Marquez. I had Marquez winning pretty much every single round. Marquez was boxing beautifully, minus the round where he knocked Marquez down, and maybe another round towards the end. I haven't seen that. I never went back to watch that fight, but it was pretty much a shutout by the veteran Juan Manuel Marquez, right? Before that, he fought at home versus Ruslan Provodnikov and got stopped, quit on the stool. So that was the momentum Mike Alvarado had going into the Brandon Rios fight. And Bob Arum, top rank, they still made that fight. So when you look at PBC side of things and the PBC structure, people are complaining about Danny Garcia versus Paulie Malignaggi. This is an outrage. And then you look at that fight. This is Danny Garcia's very first fight at welterweight, at the true welterweight, not a catchweight, his first fight at welterweight. And guess what? Paulie Malignaggi, stylistically, what he does well, a good jab, good mover, good movement, more of a pure boxer. That style has given Danny Garcia problems recently versus Mauricio Herrera, Lamont Peterson. But Al Haymon is the king of mismatches. And Danny Garcia and Paulie Malignaggi is blasphemous, right? Then you look at Andre Berto, Josito Lopez, another PBC fight. Is that fight worse? Berto, he had a shoulder surgery, and I think he fought like Upshaw. Then he came in and fought Josito Lopez, who had won like 3 fights in a row. He had stopped Aaron Martinez, the guy that knocked Robert Guerrero down recently. Stopped him. He beat Mike Arnautis, and he beat someone else. And he hadn't lost since the Maidana fight. So that was Josito Lopez's momentum going into the Berto fight. about 3 wins, and then Berto had a win after his shoulder surgery, and he looked better in that fight than he did with, obviously, Soto Carrasco, where he was hurt and wounded. So that was another PBC fight. Then you look at Guerrero Thurman. A lot of y'all said Thurman ain't fought nobody, so that was considered a step up. And Al Haymon made it, and he put Keith Thurman in there with a game guy who was coming off of the Kamagai win. So, again, if we're talking about mismatches, what is worse than Brandon Rios versus Mike Alvarado? Who came in with that type of momentum? 2 losses, 2 devastating losses, one being a stoppage at home. And that fight was still made. What welterweight fight was worse than that? Like, in terms of the matchmaking and where that fighter was in their career. Don't worry, I'll wait. So when I'm reading comments and people are griping about Luis Collazo versus Keith Thurman, but they didn't say shit when Rios fought Alvarado, who's coming off of bad losses, right? We all expected a war. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wasted my money and went out there if I didn't expect a war. But that's not what it gave me, and I should have known better based on the momentum that Alvarado had in that fight. You know what I mean? Coming off back-to-back losses. But given how exciting the first 2 fights were, I just thought it could be something special, and I was wrong. And I had to bite the bullet in that given situation. But what mismatch has Al Haymon? Thurman Collazo ain't even like that. Some people are like, oh, but Amir Khan was beating the shit out of Collazo. That's Amir Khan. Amir Khan does still, whether you don't like him or not, he's still a good fighter. He still has things that other fighters don't have, like blistering hand speed. Keith Thurman is not as fast as Amir Khan, so it's a different fight. So let's keep going. Now you look at Timothy Bradley versus Jesse Vargas, and there's a very similar fight with PBC in which you had a guy who traditionally fights at 140 came up in weight. That's Amir Khan versus Chris Algieri, right? So they were both considered, well, actually, people really ragged on the Khan versus Algieri fight, and they were like, oh, it's a mismatch, this is horrible. What was a more competitive fight? Algieri versus Khan, without a shadow of a damn doubt. I thought Vargas was getting blown out of the water, barring the 2nd round and what he did in the 12th round. And it was, I don't even know if he was winning the 12th round up until that moment. That was like a home run, Hail Mary, last 15 seconds type of perfect punch that he landed. But I don't even remember if he was really winning the round. So again, people keep griping and saying, oh, Al Haymon, all he does is give us mismatches, man. What's Bradley Vargas? Now, the only thing you can argue is that Vargas was undefeated, but I thought he lost to Anton, so I don't even really think he should have been undefeated, but his record showed he was undefeated. Cool. He brought no power. He's not a big power puncher, even despite what happened in the 12th round. Tim Bradley was just getting reckless and got caught with the perfect shot. Chris Algieri didn't bring any power. So, again, if we're holding Al Haymon to these standards and we're saying this is a mismatch, then what has Jesse Vargas ever done that would lead you to believe that he was going to beat Timothy Bradley, especially switching trainers mid-camp? You know what I'm saying? More so than what Chris Algieri had done. At least Chris Algieri did just come off of a loss against one of the greatest fighters that is active, and that's Manny Pacquiao. You know what I mean? A good fighter. Whatever, no matter what you say, even though he got blown out, he still gained valuable experience. Now, you look at it, Chris Algieri fought Pacquiao in Macau. Jesse Vargas fought Antonio DeMarco in Macau. So, nonetheless, Chris Algieri at least had the experience, you know what I mean? Fighting Ruslan, fighting Pacquiao, versus you look at Jesse Vargas. I mean, it's just, this is such hypocrisy, and people fail to get it. They want to slam the gavel down like, guilty, Al Haymon, king of the mismatches. But when I'm going through the rap sheet, I'm not seeing anything drastically different than I'm seeing with the other promoters, right? You know what I mean? Like, what did they had Broner Porter, and then you look at Lucas Matisse versus Ruslan Provodnikov. Now, I would say I like Lucas Matisse Provodnikov, the action of that fight, a bit more because it was more controlled, and then I thought that Broner Porter was a little bit sloppy, but Broner and Porter was still more of an event. You know what I mean? They had the bright lights, they had some build up, like, you know, AB, Sean, he give his money to his daddy, and he's still riding the Uber. You know what I mean? So it was fun for that reason because there was a lot of build up. There was a little bit of drama in the 12th round. Ultimately, Broner didn't do what he was supposed to do to make it at least competitive. But nonetheless, it's not even about. I'm talking about the people who are talking about mismatches, because ultimately you got to try to put the best fights together, and you don't know how it's going to actually end up until they actually start fighting. But you have a good indication based on, you know what I mean, the momentum that they bring into the fight, who they've beaten, who they lost to, recent performances, etc. You know what I mean? So this is just part one. I just want to talk about mismatches because everyone keeps talking and ragging on PBC, saying it like they're the only ones putting out mismatches. But there will be more volumes of this. I just don't want to make them all too long. But it's just like the other thing, which I'm going to talk about more in my next video, is you're getting a lot of fights. A lot of fights. Darrell DeGale, Garcia, Peterson, Sakio Bika, Adonis. And that's going to be for the next volume. But for now, drop me a comment. Let me know what mismatches trump Brandon Rios versus Mike Alvarado. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like my video. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.